So, Kaylee, I come to you on this. Brian just mentioned a political witch hunt and that allegations that Governor Cuomo had essentially called the investigation as such, and the Attorney General, which this morning the Attorney General said she found it offensive. What do you see in the way of further comments from Mayor de Blasio? We saw him earlier today. We just showed that live shot where he said, you know, I'm going to reserve judgment essentially till I read more. What can we expect from top Democrat Party leaders on the national stage in terms of their reaction to this, do you think?
Yeah, I think we should hear from them. This will certainly be asked in a White House press briefing. There will be White House reaction to this. There will be pressure to hear from lawmakers like Nancy Pelosi and others. Those have been very vocal on issues like that. Kristen Sinema, she will be asked to react, among others. So there's a lot of pressure in the Democrat Party building on the governor. I imagine they're huddled in his mansion strategizing about what to do. I don't anticipate him stepping down. It would be really political suicide for him to do so, but it's the right thing to do. The allegations we heard are grotesque. They're appalling. One woman saying her career in public service ended because the governor was bored and lonely. This is a classic example of a man who is drunk on power, who abused his position. And just take a walk down memory lane. You had ABC News reporting on the fact that there was a groundswell of Cuomo for 2020 support on the ground for running for president. You had USA Today saying this is America's governor. You had a fawning profile in Forbes talking about how compassionate he was, and he's such a steady leader in a time of COVID, when what was going on behind the scenes was much different. Not just the appalling sexual assault allegations, but the nursing home scandal, the book scandal, the special testing for his family. This man was a monster. I mean, an absolute and total monster. The right thing to do is step down. I don't think he will do so. He'll follow the Ralph Northam playbook and just write out scandal, but it is no doubt the right thing to do, stepping down.
All right, Kaylee, now here's what New York investigator Ann Clark said just moments ago. Watch.
On November 16th, 2020, in the executive mansion, the governor hugged executive assistant number 1 and reached under her blouse to grab her breast. This was the culmination of a pattern of inappropriate sexual conduct, including numerous close and intimate hugs, where the governor held her so closely that her breasts were pressed against his body, and he sometimes ran his hands up and down her back while he did so. There were also several occasions on which the governor grabbed her butt. Executive assistant number 1 had vowed that she was going to take these violations, as she put it, to the grave. She was terrified that if she spoke out, she would lose her job. But she broke down in front of colleagues when she heard the governor on March 3rd, 2021, in his press conference claim that he had never touched anyone inappropriately.
Kaylee, what we're just hearing there is partly what the Attorney General described as a culture of fear and flirtation, essentially normalizing, frankly, illegal behavior, while at the same time holding his employees under a thumb of fear that if they did anything slightly wrong, they would be severely retaliated against, to the form of a, quote, abusive environment there.
Yeah, that's right. The one accuser, it just makes your stomach churn. The one saying that I was a victim of sexual assault, and he weaponized that against me. He used it against me. Her history and her pain and her past. A governor of a huge state using her pain, twisting it, saying, I date women under 25 when she was just 22 years old, and all she wanted to do was do her job. I mean, this is gut-wrenching imagery here that we've learned detail by detail as we comb through this report. And what makes matters even worse, Emily, I believe we have this soundbite that we'll toss to right now, is this image of Governor Cuomo that I could not get out of my head as I heard these gruesome details.
Governor, have you ever had an intimate relationship with a fellow state employee?
Intimate, you mean sexual relationship? Well, don't just read the question. You have to know basically what it means. Intimate has a number of manifestations. I think we have an intimate relationship. Don't you think that? Yeah. Not a sexual relationship. No. Made you uncomfortable with that question, didn't I?
Copy.
Smug arrogant, cruel. I mean, imagine you're that young woman who's been sexually assaulted not once in your life, but now twice, Julie, and that's what you watch, a cackling governor who has assaulted you.
I mean, smug narcissist. That's what I'm thinking when I watch that. And he just laughs it off like it's nothing. I mean, among the 11 women coming forward, many of those who had come forward before, I guarantee you there will be more to follow. And kudos to those brave women who actually came forward during all of this. Certainly the nursing home disaster and the abuse of power, giving special privileges to those within his close family and friends to get the COVID vaccine and to get COVID tests throughout this whole thing. 74,000 pieces of evidence, 179 interviews. The state trooper was a surprise to me to hear the stories of all of his accusers, especially a state trooper, for God's sakes. 22-year-old woman, she's riding in an elevator with the Love Gov, which was despicable in its own right, that he actually had that name. He had a nickname that he was actually proud of. His own brother actually used it on international and national cable news. But nonetheless, she worked in his protective detail. And we learned today that he ran his finger down her spine in an elevator saying, "Hey, you." Well, I got to say something to the Love Gov. Hey, Love Gov, game over. Because after this, with the New York State Assembly, which they will convene, and they will now have to decide whether or not they go forward with impeachment. Could you imagine the backlash if they don't? Now, let's remind our viewers that the New York State Assembly is made up of Democrats, and our governor is a Democrat, our mayor is a Democrat. But how long do you stand behind this guy right here who has completely abused his power, state and federal power? And it's just a matter of time whether or not this man faces charges. The fact that he has not faced charges up until this point is, quite frankly, not shocking, but so incredibly disappointing. And the fact that not one police report has been filed against this schmuck. I mean, there has not been a police report. All these women who have come out and accused him of what Letitia James just said, she's got piles of evidence to support. The fact that he has not been actually criminally charged at this point is just another example of the abuse of power that has been going on in our country for so long and too long. And hopefully some examples will be made today.
That's right, Julie. And we do know that the Albany Police Department is currently investigating the incident of the breast groping that he engaged in. I'm glad you brought up the state trooper as well, because to me that illustrated that power dynamic, right? The picture that the investigator painted where the trooper was holding the door open for him. And it was while she was doing that in one of the instances where he touched her, as she said, from chest to privates. It's absolutely appalling. And now we know for sure illegal. Now, moving forward to civil rights attorney and Fox News contributor Leo Terrell, who's now joining us by phone with reaction. Leo, can you hear us today? What is your top line reaction to all of this developing right now, sir?
I'll tell you exactly. Thank you for having me, Emily. The bottom line is simply this. He's a sexual predator. He should not be given preferential treatment because he's currently governor. There should be civil charges filed as far as civil lawsuits, and there has to be a criminal investigation, the groping of the breast. But I also want to mention one other thing. It is great to have that 11 hours of testimony from him, because those words will come back to haunt him. And that is a wealth of information for the state lawmakers, for a civil prosecutor, for a criminal prosecutor to pursue. Because I guarantee you, he probably lied in those statements that he gave to the AG. Overall, the next 48 hours is going to be very critical among the district attorney's office to file some form of charges, and whether or not there'll be a series of civil lawsuits, and what he will actually do as governor. I agree with Kaylee. I don't think he's going to resign, because that position immunes him and provides him with some form of temporary protection.
And Leo, do you foresee from him any type of mea culpa? Do you see, we've, as Brian illustrated earlier, we've seen sort of a change in his behavior, although he's never been admitting, and he's always sort of carried within him that hubris as he surrounds himself with his advisors and carries on day to day. Do you see from him after this any change in that tactic, any change from him up until now absolutely digging in and refusing to admit he had engaged in anything less than what he interpreted as acceptable behavior?
Well, I'll tell you right now, Emily, I believe the next 48 hours, I think his team, because there's this combination of a political, legal combination that's going on right now. Because he's a governor, that's the political advantage he has. The legal system is after him. So he's going to use his political position to try to provide as much protection for him. And I think the advisors that he has politically and legal will be in his ear for the next 48 hours. I want to mention one other thing, which I think is very important. You know, the Democrats always use this term, systemic racism, systemic harassment. You have systemic sexual harassment. The 11 women constitute a pattern in practice. I want the Fox viewers to hear that. Here's a perfect example. These 11 women show that there's a pattern in practice of sexual harassment. And I'll tell you right now, from a civil standpoint, he's definitely liable. And if those individuals, his supervisor, his support staff, were in a managerial position, they could be held civilly liable because they participated in this pattern and practice of a governmental agency harassing women. And that is very, very significant.
That's exactly right. And the investigator specifically said that toxic, hostile, abusive culture is what allowed that harassment to occur and persist, to your point, to create that pattern and practice. It was essentially this ripe cesspool of fertile ground for this abusive, illegal behavior. Leo, can you just walk us through as well for viewers that civil angle that you're approaching right now, that you're taking? We have a 3-year statute of limitations on the federal side. What do viewers need to understand about the civil versus criminal liability that he's facing and what they might expect coming down the pike for him?
Thanks for asking me this question, because as a civil rights attorney for 30 years, I've handled these types of cases. The key here is to find out for the civil side. The key here is to find out the civil statute of limitations within the state of New York. If any of these acts occurred within that time period, Emily, in order to establish this pattern practice, acts that occur outside the statute of limitation would be applicable to impose liability. So if I'm a civil rights attorney, I'm looking at all these 11 cases. I'm looking at what portions of each of these 11 victims I can use within the statute of limitations. And once I get that, I can bring as much as I can into the case. There's an argument of sexual discrimination or sexual harassment, and the golden one is retaliation. So you got a multitude of claims against the governor and his staff. Sexual discrimination, retaliation, and let me tell you right now, it's easier to prove retaliation than it is the actual discrimination, because all you're looking for are adverse acts of conduct after the complaint of harassment or discrimination has been reported. Retaliation, always easier to prove than the actual act itself. On the criminal side, again, it goes on, it applies to the statute of limitation. And that's where the district attorney of the state of New York, as it relates to, in my opinion, no question about it, the groping of the breast, that's definitely an assault. That's definitely straight up an easy, in my opinion, if the evidence holds up, a slam dunk criminal charge against the governor. And I'm waiting to see if the district attorney in Albany will pursue that immediately, because justice denied is inappropriate in this case. So you have the criminal track and the civil track. I think from this point on, you're not going to hear a peep from Governor Cuomo regarding any of these acts, because any type of statements now, Emily, will be used against him. That's the biggest mistake he made, if I was defending him, which I would never do in a lifetime, is that statement, 11-hour statement that he gave to the Attorney General. That's going to come back to haunt him.
Yeah, and it remains to be seen whether indeed he can keep his mouth shut, Leo, because I don't know if he's demonstrated that restraint, frankly, in the past, right? He just digs himself a bigger hole. Leo Terrell, thank you so much for your insightful analysis as always. We will have you standing by for us, sir,